Okay, so Bonnie, I sent you a second question and it was so long. I don't even know that if you want to get into it and or not. Did you have a second to look at the second question I
I
sent you?
did. I did. Is
Okay,
that person outside of California?
I don't know for that one.
Okay. As I remember this question, this parent has been empowered by learning about her rights as a parent with a child with special needs.
And
And
she's also a teacher. Yeah.
she has really benefited from learning that she can stand up for herself. And she has also really benefited from learning that even within the, like, rough road of negotiating special education, there are committed people within educational institutions that really aren't political and care about getting what's right. But the way I read her question as it went on, and maybe we should read it on the air and pick it up next week. But what I'm hearing is she needs more information about her child's profile. And I'm not hearing that she has a good comprehensive assessment. So, like, it would be nice to walk through her facts and see if she's in a position to get an outside evaluation. To do that, we'd need to know what was the last date that the child was evaluated by the district and what areas they evaluated in. Like,
Okay.
I'm hearing that she's doing a lot of advocacy for herself, and I'm happy to suggest like more sources of information so she can keep continuing to learn. But I'm also feeling like, even like, you can do great advocacy, but if you don't really know what your kid needs and you don't have a way to prove to the district that you have evidence of same that you could use against them in a due process hearing, you're going to kind of flutter around at the IEP level, and you'll know things like, oh, I get to tape record or audio recorder. Oh, this is how you consent to an IEP. Or, oh, in California, I don't have to consent to the things that I don't like. I can consent to only some of them. But what is your overriding objective and your strategic plan for your child's education, especially now during COVID?
Okay,
So,
let me read some sections
sure.
of the letter so that people know kind of what we're talking about. I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's a lot here, but she says, I'm trying to build a positive relationship with the school district, but that, her child has encountered people that are not, as she refers to them as some of the people, which are amazing earth angels, and that, but that she, he runs into special ed teachers and principals that are not that. And that she's learned a lot from watching Autism Live and watching Bonnie, and that she drafts out a letter before bringing it to the IEP and brings a tape recorder, and that has really empowered her, and she wants to share that with parents. She wants to give us a snapshot of what's going on because, like all of us, the story gets long, right? She says, I want the new school to honor his 30 minutes in general education classroom and not general education PE. The old school even wrote a description of his time in general ed class, but the new school refused to honor the previous IEP. The principal and the special education teacher came up with the excuse that, in their words, we did not check some type of core curriculum box in the IEP. So
Yeah,
they
that's hogwash.
so they honored it by placing him in Gen Ed PE instead of some. So they had to
Yeah,
honor putting him in Gen Ed, and they chose PE, which is
yeah.
just
Gen Ed cop out.
right. Then I asked the principal to check the box now, and she refused and stated that his FAPE remains the same. The special education teacher and principal violated the following items. One, they did not give us safe ground. Two, they already made up their minds that they wanted to do with my son. They disregarded other members' inputs in the meeting. Three, even the Harbor regional representative was upset and told me for the next IEP meeting, we needed to bring an advocate. Now with the pandemic situation, I want to request for him to have access to Gen Ed Google Classroom and have extended time to turn in his work because I'm working mom and I teach too.
So
And
I forgot about the Gen Ed angle. You've got basically a case for mainstreaming, and I think you might need an expert to make the case, or it might be a lot of evidence in the documents that you already have about why mainstreaming is appropriate for him. We've covered on the show before the fact that mainstreaming with supports is the default, and it sounds like there are reasons why they aren't putting him in general ed are really weak and flaky. So if she is in California, in fact, she's in Southern California because she's with the Harbor Regional Center. So we can talk about either now or next week, depending on how much time is left this afternoon. We can talk about the kind of things that we do when students aren't being mainstreamed and they're high functioning. And often, you have a high functioning kid with autism, and they just don't want to be in the position of having to pay for a good para or behavior therapist in the classroom. So they're just trying to keep them in special ed. And anytime you see that and you see that they're like, oh, well, we'll mainstream during lunch, or we'll meet mainstream at the assembly, you can see that's pretty classic textbook. Like it smells bad, and further investigation is needed. So again, it would be nice to know, how long ago he was assessed, and in what areas, and exactly what the offer has been in the IEP. And it sounds like they don't have a good justification at all. But do you have recordings of those meetings so you can show that they illegally refused to consider mainstreaming in a meaningful way? If so, we do these mainstreaming cases all the time. I mean, we don't see as many of them as we once would have, because mainstreaming is the presumptive placement. So,
Yeah.
you'd have to tell me, you'd have to apply the Rachel Holland test. And if your child can learn in the classroom and he's, still young and getting a lot of social benefit and he's not disruptive, they got to mainstream.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm a huge fan of mainstreaming, and it used to be I used to naively say everyone, and I'm a former teacher, and I say everyone should be mainstreamed. I have come to understand that mainstreaming isn't right for everyone. That kiddos who can't self-regulate, it can be too much for them. Kiddos who are harmful to themselves and other people, it creates an environment that is not good, right? So I no longer believe that everyone should be mainstream, but I still think that overwhelming majority of our kids can and should be mainstreamed. And what I have come across— it doesn't
have to be all or nothing, Shannon. You could be mainstreamed 50% of the time. And the reason we keep kids that are not well suited in some ways in mainstream classes is because special ed classes are so bad.
Well, yes. And I have to say that in my world, I had Bonnie helping me early on. And so when we started school, we were mainstreamed, and that was great. But later on, when it was time for my son to go to junior high, my child, who had never spent a minute in a special day classroom, we went for the transition meeting to go to junior high, and they informed me that they wanted him to go to a different school than his home school, to be in an enclosed classroom instead of changing classes, and to be in a special ed classroom with 14 boys, no girls, and the same teacher for every subject. My really smart kid who was looking forward to taking all of these electives. And we fought tooth and nail right up until the week before school started. They were not going to do it. And what I discovered is because they were afraid that they didn't know how. That was the problem that I had to overcome. Was they had tried inclusion many years before, and they had a negative experience, and they decided it couldn't be done.
Yeah, well, the law doesn't agree that you just get to fold up your tent if it's hard, or if you have to bring in outside consultants to teach you how to do it.
And we continued to fight, and we continued to fight with Bonnie's help. And my kid went to the school that he was supposed to go to. He changed classes. He did so wonderfully. And it was just a 2-year junior high school. And at the end, they said, thank you. We now know that this is possible. So not only did it work out for my kid, but it made room for other kids. And I was ready to fold. But Bonnie said not to. And Dr. Doreen Grampichet told me she would kick me with one of her pointed shoes if I caved in. And she said, because they were telling me all kinds of crap, like he can't handle this. We've never had a kid be able to handle this. The other kids will eat him alive, and Dr. Grampichet said to me, now stop that. We prepared him for this. He's ready. And he was. So I'm just here to tell you, push, push, push. And because you are in California, reach out to Bonnie, get a consultation with her so that they don't roll over you on this, because that's crappy.
Yeah, I mean, the law's on your side. The law says in the absence of other information to the contrary, the district has to offer general ed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Now we did.
your district needs to get with the program.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we've only got 2 minutes left, and we did have somebody write in earlier that they wanted to know my opinion about IEPs and this COVID and distance learning for a 5-year-old. We're going to be covering a lot more topics having to do with this over the next few weeks. It's really, about the education component about it, but you've heard Bonnie speak a little bit about what your rights are, and I think that that's important to do.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.